I was standing in front of an old orphanage, looking up at the entrance, and the door was 12 feet tall, 12 feet for children. Orphaned children, supposedly, the smallest, most vulnerable people in society. And someone built them a door tall enough for two grown men standing on each other's shoulders. So I started looking at other buildings from the same period. Libraries, government buildings, train stations, museums, schools. And I found the same thing. Doors 10, 12, 14 feet tall, in buildings constructed between 1890 and 1920. In every major city: Philadelphia, Boston, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, London, Paris, Melbourne. All built during the same 30-year period, all following the same architectural style, all with doors that dwarf human beings. And the official explanation is, it's just the Beaux-Arts style, just classical proportions, just grandeur for grandeur's sake. But when you look at which buildings got these doors and when they were built and who was teaching architects to build this way, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The style is called Beaux-Arts, named after the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, where American architects went to study in the late 1800s. Richard Morris Hunt studied there. H. Richardson, Charles McKim, Daniel Burnham. Every major architect who designed America's institutional buildings between 1890 and 1920 either attended the École or learned from someone who did. And here's what they were taught. From architectural documentation, students would redraw columns, cornices and triangular pediments from classical Greek and Roman buildings. They learned to emphasize the importance of grand arrival halls and the progression of formal spaces. Instructors encouraged the prioritization of lavish entry halls with grandiose proportions. Grandiose proportions. That's the actual term used in architectural training. Not appropriate proportions, not human scale proportions. Grandiose, meaning deliberately oversized, intentionally imposing, designed to make you feel small. And from Wikipedia's description of Beaux-Arts characteristics, slightly overscaled details, slightly overscaled. A 12-foot door isn't slightly overscaled, it's massively overscaled, but that's the term they use. Slightly. As if doors twice the height of a human being are just a minor aesthetic choice. Now here's what makes this interesting. The Beaux-Arts style wasn't used for everything. It was specifically mandated for certain types of buildings. From architectural history, Beaux-Arts was mostly used for grand public and institutional buildings. Public and institutional. Government buildings, courthouses, city halls, libraries, museums, train stations, universities, schools, and orphanages. Buildings where the government or institutions interacted with the public. Buildings designed to represent authority. Buildings where power was exercised over people. And all of them were built with the same oversized doors. Between 1890 and 1920. Let me show you the timeline. The style gained prominence after the 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exposition. The White City, where every major building was designed in the Beaux-Arts style. Massive, monumental, classical, and according to architectural records, the fair structures were large classical-style buildings, almost all painted white. City planners left the exhibition inspired to build gleaming new cities across America. Grand buildings that would evoke pride and civic unity through architecture that dwarfs human beings. From the Chicago Architecture Center, the buildings they designed conveyed a sense of heaviness and honored the history of ancient ideals, making the Beaux-Arts style widely popular in cultural and government institutions. A sense of heaviness, ancient ideals, and it became the dominant style for institutional buildings across America. By the early 1900s, every major city was building libraries, courthouses, and government buildings in the Beaux-Arts style. Well, what's with doors 10 to 14 feet tall? Philadelphia City Hall is a perfect example. Construction began in 1871, completed in 1901, designed in the Second Empire style, which evolved into Beaux-Arts. And here's the scale: 548 feet tall, including the William Penn statue. The tallest habitable building in the world from 1894 to 1908. 14.26 acres of floor space, over 250 sculptures by Alexander Milne Calder, and walls up to 22 feet thick in some places. 22 feet thick. This isn't a building designed for human comfort. This is a building designed to inspire awe. From the architectural documentation, City Hall was conceived as the tallest building in the world. It was an important style and enormous influence, particularly for institutional and public buildings. Particularly for institutional buildings, not homes, not private buildings, or institutions, places where government exercises authority over citizens. And all of them were built with doors that make humans feel small. Now here's what architectural historians say about why. From the Design Encyclopedia, the style emphasized classical, Greek and Roman forms and features, elaborate detailing, massive plans, and heavy masonry. A hallmark of the style is its elaborate, decorated surfaces with little area left unornamented. Grand Roman arches and colossal columns or pilasters, often paired, are typically featured. Colossal columns, grand Roman arches, massive plans, and they justify it by saying it references classical Greek and Roman architecture, temple architecture, buildings designed to honor gods. But here's the thing about temple architecture. Greek and Roman temples were deliberately designed to make humans feel small, to inspire reverence, submission, awe before divine power. The massive columns, the towering doorways, the grand steps, all designed to make you feel insignificant, to remind you of your place in the cosmic hierarchy. Let me explain how this works psychologically. When you approach a Greek temple, say the Parthenon, you're walking on level ground. Then you see the temple ahead. It sits on a raised platform. Already, it's above you. You must look up. You begin climbing the steps. Each step is shallow but wide. The climb takes time. Your body works. As you climb, the building looms larger. The columns grow more imposing. By the time you reach the top, you're physically tired from the climb. And you're standing before columns 40 feet tall, 5-6 times your height. The doorway to the inner sanctum? Proportionally massive. You walk through. The ceiling soars above you. Every physical element tells your body. You're small. The space is vast. The gods are great. You're insignificant. That's not accidental. That's thousands of years of refined architectural psychology. The Greeks and Romans understood something fundamental. Architecture shapes psychology. The spaces we move through affect how we feel. Tall ceilings make us feel small. Narrow passages make us feel constrained. Open spaces make us feel free. And temples were designed with one specific psychological goal: make the human supplicant feel their smallness before divine greatness. It worked. It still works. Visit the Pantheon in Rome today and you'll feel it. The space overwhelms you, makes you aware of your physical smallness, inspires awe. That's the entire purpose of temple architecture. Now, why did American and European architects in the 1890s to 1920s adopt temple architecture for civic buildings? Government buildings aren't temples. Libraries aren't temples. Orphanages definitely aren't temples. These are secular institutional buildings, built to serve the public. So why design them like temples? Why use architecture specifically developed to make humans feel small before divine authority? To inspire awe and submission before gods? For buildings that process paperwork, lend books, house orphans? From architectural analysis, cities wanted their public buildings to inspire as much awe as a cathedral. Inspire awe, like a cathedral. But a cathedral inspires awe before God. Oh, what are civic buildings inspiring awe before? The government, the institution, the system? Let me show you the pattern more clearly. Every building type that got Beaux-Arts treatment was an institution that exercises authority. Government buildings, where laws are made, enforced, adjudicated courthouses, where justice is administered, sentences delivered. City halls, where civic authority is centralized. Libraries, where knowledge is collected, cataloged, controlled. Museums, where history is interpreted, artifacts selected, narratives established. Train stations, where movement is regulated, tickets required, schedules enforced. Universities, where education is standardized, degrees conferred. Expertise certified schools, where children are taught approved curriculum. Orphanages, where abandoned children are processed by the state. Every single one is an institution of control, and every single one was built with doors that dwarf human beings. Between 1890 and 1920. Now here's what makes the timeline impossible to ignore. The Beaux-Arts style dominated American institutional architecture from 1890 to 1920, exactly 30 years. According to architectural history, the style remained popular in the United States and Chicago until the Great Depression. From another source, broadly speaking, the term Beaux-Arts refers to the American Renaissance period from about 1890 to 1920. 1890 to 1920. The exact period when Tartary disappeared from maps, 1850 to 1920. Statues lost their provenance, 1840 to 1920. Museums filled with unknown attributions, 1870 to 1920. World's Fair sculptures were destroyed, 1893 to 1901. Historical narratives were standardized, AHA founded 1884, Committee of 10 1892. 100,000 plus people isolated in utopian communities, 1840 to 1920. 250,000 children on orphan trains, 1854 to 1929. Americanization movement erased immigrant heritage, 1900 to 1924, all happening simultaneously, while architects trained at the École des Beaux-Arts were building institutional buildings with 12-foot doors, designed to make humans feel small, to inspire awe before institutional authority. And here's what they say about the purpose. From architectural documentation, it was about civic pride as much as beauty. Cities wanted their public buildings to inspire as much awe as a cathedral. Beaux-Arts wasn't afraid to show off. These buildings leave clues everywhere, big, bold, and loaded with sculpted details, gigantic columns, swooping arches, or stone angels perched at the top. The style expressed the taste and values of America's industrial barons at the turn of the century. America's industrial barons, the people who controlled the factories, the railroads, the banks, the same people funding the institutions, the same people deciding what got taught in schools, what went in museums, what was published in libraries. And they wanted buildings that inspired awe, buildings that made citizens feel small, buildings that reminded people of their place in the hierarchy. Let me show you what architectural critics at the time said. When Philadelphia City Hall was completed, its architecture was already considered out of fashion and thus became the object of some ridicule. Critics called it the Tower of Folly and the Marble Elephant. By the 1950s, the city explored demolishing it. Why? Because tastes had changed. By the mid-20th century, people found the Beaux-Arts style gaudy and excessive. From one architectural historian, within just one generation, the buildings and homes were considered gaudy and excessive. One generation. The style dominated for 30 years. Then suddenly it was considered excessive. Too much. Too imposing. Too authoritarian. And modernist architecture replaced it with human-scale buildings, functional design, accessibility, the opposite of Beaux-Arts. So why did one generation build monuments to institutional power and the next generation reject them? Here's what you need to understand about the École des Beaux-Arts. It wasn't just teaching architecture, it was teaching a philosophy of architecture, a way of thinking about buildings and their relationship to people. From architectural documentation, the curriculum and the style were based on European classicism, especially Italian and French palaces and estates of the 16th to 18th centuries. Palaces, not homes, not cottages, not buildings designed for ordinary people. Palaces designed for kings, emperors, aristocrats. Buildings designed to separate rulers from subjects, to demonstrate power through architecture. And this is what they taught American architects, then sent them back to design America's civic institutions. Libraries for the public, designed like palaces. Schools for children, designed like palaces. Orphanages for abandoned children, designed like palaces, with doors 12 feet tall. Now let's talk about the orphanages specifically, because this is where the absurdity becomes undeniable. Orphanages built in the Beaux-Arts style between 1900 and 1920 for children, abandoned children, the most vulnerable members of society, children who had lost their parents, who had nothing, who depended entirely on institutional charity, and someone decided these children needed to enter through doors 12 feet tall. Let me paint the picture more clearly. It's 1910. You're a 7-year-old child. Your parents died in a factory accident or from disease. You have no relatives willing to take you in. The state intervenes, processes you, assigns you to an orphanage. You arrive at the building. It's massive, built of limestone or marble. Classical columns frame the entrance. You have to climb stone steps, each step itself almost as tall as your knee. You reach the entrance, and you look up. The door is 12 feet tall, solid wood, ornate carvings, heavy hardware. You, at 4 feet tall, barely reach the door handle. You push. The door is so heavy it barely moves. You push harder. Finally, it swings open. You walk through an entrance designed for someone 3 times your size, into a lavish entry hall with grandiose proportions, where the ceilings soar 20, 30 feet above you, where marble columns dwarf you further, where every architectural element reinforces the same message. You are small, the institution is large. You are powerless, the institution has power over you. You are temporary, the institution is permanent. This isn't something you think consciously. You're 7 years old, but your body knows it every time you enter, every time you look up, every time you push those massive doors. The architecture is teaching you your place. Why? According to the architectural principles of Beaux-Arts, it's about grandiose proportions and lavish entry halls. But think about what that means in practice, in actual human terms, for actual children, the most vulnerable people in society, who had just lost everything, being reminded, architecturally, every single day, how small and powerless they are. That's not accidental. That's the architecture doing exactly what it was designed to do, making the individual feel insignificant before institutional authority. And it's not just orphanages. Look at the schools built during this period. Public schools, high schools, universities, all designed in the Beaux-Arts style, all with oversized doors. From one architectural analysis, Beaux-Arts was widely popular in cultural and government institutions, as well as homes for the wealthy. Cultural and government institutions. But notice what's missing. Homes for ordinary people. Working-class homes weren't built in Beaux-Arts style. Middle-class homes weren't built in Beaux-Arts style. Only institutions and homes for the wealthy. Let me make this distinction crystal clear. If you were a wealthy industrialist in 1900, you could commission a Beaux-Arts mansion with grand entrance halls, towering ceilings, massive doors. Well, you got to live in grandeur, to experience daily the psychological boost of monumental space. Your children grew up in rooms with 12-foot ceilings, walking through doors designed for kings. The architecture told them, you are important, you matter, you belong in grand spaces. But if you were a factory worker, a shopkeeper, a clerk, your home had normal doors, 8 feet, maybe 7, human scale, normal ceilings, modest rooms, practical spaces, nothing grand, nothing imposing, nothing that made you feel powerful or important. And where did you encounter grandeur? Only when interacting with institutions. When you needed to use the library, grandiose architecture, doors that dwarfed you. When you went to court, grandiose architecture, made to feel small before the law. When you sent your kids to school, grandiose architecture. Reminded education was controlled by institutions larger than you. When you boarded a train, grandiose architecture. Movement regulated by institutions with massive stone buildings. The message was transmitted architecturally, repeatedly, consistently. Grandeur belongs to institutions and the wealthy. You belong in your small house, passing through normal doors. But when you interact with authority, when you need something from the government, when you use public services, when you send your children to be educated, you are reminded of your smallness. You must climb those grand steps, look up at those towering doors, enter spaces designed to make you feel insignificant. Not because you're actually insignificant, but because the architecture is designed to make you feel that way. To remind you, the institution is permanent, powerful, important. You are temporary, powerless, small. This isn't speculation. This is architectural psychology. The same psychology that designed temples to inspire awe before gods, applied to civic buildings, to inspire awe before institutions. Here's what architectural historians say about the decline of Beaux-Arts. From one source, by 1930 and the Depression, Beaux-Arts had lost its appeal. Within just one generation, the buildings and homes were considered gaudy and excessive. The Great Depression changed everything. When millions were unemployed, homeless, hungry, buildings designed to inspire awe through excess started to feel obscene. Spending millions on marble columns and 12-foot doors while people starved seemed wrong. And the style died, replaced by Art Deco, then modernism, then international style. Styles that emphasized function over form, human scale over monumental grandeur, accessibility over awe. But here's what's interesting. The Beaux-Arts buildings didn't disappear. They're still there, in every major city. Libraries, courthouses, museums, train stations, still with their 12-foot doors, still making humans feel small, still serving their original purpose, reminding citizens that institutions are larger, more permanent, more powerful than individuals. So now go to your local library. If it was built between 1890 and 1920, look at the entrance, look at the doors, look at the steps leading up to them, look at the columns framing them. Notice how the architecture is designed to make you look up, to crane your neck, to be aware of the building's size relative to yours. Then ask yourself, why does a public library need doors 12 feet tall? Why does a building designed to lend books need to inspire awe? Why does an institution serving the public need to dwarf the public? And why was this architectural style mandated for institutional buildings during the exact period when maps were being redrawn? History was being standardized, statues were losing their identities, books were being banned, children were being separated from heritage, immigrant cultures were being erased, institutional gatekeepers were consolidating control over knowledge. The official answer is simple. It's just the Beaux-Arts style, just classical proportions, just architects copying Greek and Roman temples because they looked impressive. Nothing more sinister than aesthetic preference. But Greek and Roman temples were designed to make humans feel small before gods. And Beaux-Arts civic buildings use the exact same design principles to make humans feel small before institutions. During the exact period when those same institutions were deciding what history was legitimate, American Historical Association, 1884, standardizing what children learned, Committee of 10, 1892, controlling which artifacts mattered, Smithsonian, 1846, determining whose art was authentic, museum attributions, 1870 to 1920, regulating who could immigrate, 1924 Immigration Act, processing orphaned children, orphan trains, 1854 to 1929, all while building themselves palaces, with doors 12 feet tall. Here's what one architectural description says about the style's purpose. Beaux-Arts buildings have a love affair with symmetrical facades, all meaning everything lines up perfectly right and left, no matter how over the top the details get. It's like all the greatest hits of Western architecture mashed into one powerful show. Beaux-Arts wasn't afraid to show off. Everything, from the smallest iron-rimmed door to the tallest marble stair, was carefully considered. A powerful show, show off, carefully considered, every detail designed to create an effect. And what effect does a 12-foot door create? It makes the human small. It requires the human to look up. It reminds the human that they are entering a space designed for something greater than themselves. In temples, that something greater was God. In civic buildings, that something greater was the institution, the government, the system, the authority. And you, the individual citizen, were meant to feel your smallness, to approach with reverence, to remember your place. And here's the final piece. The École des Beaux-Arts wasn't just teaching Americans. It was teaching architects from all over the world. From the documentation, the Beaux-Arts style was an important style and enormous influence in Europe and the Americas through the end of the 19th century and into the 20th. Europe and the Americas, which is why you find the same oversized doors in London's institutional buildings, Paris's government buildings, Berlin's museums, Vienna's libraries, Melbourne's civic buildings, all built during the same period, all following the same architectural principles, all designed to make humans feel small. This wasn't just an American phenomenon, it was a coordinated global architectural movement, taught at one school in Paris, spread by architects trained there, implemented in institutional buildings worldwide, during the exact period when global power structures were being consolidated, when empires were being formalized, when education was being standardized, when historical narratives were being unified, when institutional control over knowledge was being established. And all of it was housed in buildings with 12-foot doors. So when you walk past an old library or courthouse or museum, built between 1890 and 1920, and you see those massive doors, don't think, what impressive architecture. Think, who were these doors designed to impress? Don't think, beautiful classical proportions. Think, why did they choose proportions that dwarf humans? Don't think, civic pride. Think, pride in what? Power over whom? Because the doors aren't 12 feet tall by accident. They're 12 feet tall by design, taught at the École des Beaux-Arts, implemented globally, during the exact period when everything else was being systematically controlled, renamed, erased, and standardized. The buildings were designed to make you feel small, and they still work. Every time you climb those steps, every time you pull open those massive doors, every time you enter an institution, you are reminded, this place is bigger than you, more permanent than you, more powerful than you, and you, the individual, are small. That's not a bug in the architectural design. That's the entire purpose.